So for Kant, how does this story, this idea that all we can know about the human mind is how it represents the world, relate to questions in the philosophy of art? Well, Kant will argue that beauty, like all truth, will be the result of how the human mind structures our perceptual reality. So here are some of the key things that you're going to find in the reading as you start making your way through. Some of the easier stuff to understand is when Kant starts talking about the nature of fine art, which is just kind of what we mean by art, fine art as opposed to, let's say, the art of making a chair or something like that. When we say art, we usually mean fine art, these kinds of representations of the world that are artistic in nature. So Kant starts out with a sort of commonsensical idea that what makes something fine art has to, in the first place, follow the basic rules of art. So a painting, in order to be a good painting, has to follow the rules of painting. You have to have perspective and know something about the color wheel and use those formal properties like mass and volume and color and texture in the right way to create a great painting. This is a representation by Michelangelo from his sketches as he's preparing to create the tomb of Julius. You can see the architectural abilities at work here, the representational abilities at work, the stylistic abilities of work, and Michelangelo clearly understands those artistic and engineering principles at work in making something that is a work of art. Here's another sketch from Michelangelo as he was working on the Sistine Chapel and that depiction of God reaching out to man. You can see him working with lines and shape and texture and color. You can see he understands the human body and how to represent elements of musculature within that. He's a technically competent, technically excellent artist. But ultimately, Kant will argue that true works of art that represent true artistic beauty are the product of genius, and that knowing all these technical aspects of art, like the formal properties, like using perspective, like using the color wheel, is never enough to teach someone to create beauty. Beauty cannot be defined, according to Kant, by any rule or any set of rules that will tell a person how to make beautiful art. Beautiful art, Kant argues in the reading, is necessarily a product of genius, because making beautiful art is a matter of having access to that aspect of the human perceptual system that just intuitively understands how things should look in order to be represented to us in a way that expresses harmony, purpose, and beauty. It's not a concept, it's a representational or a perceptual quality, and only those who truly have access to that creative sense of beauty in the human mind can create these kinds of works of art, and that ability is called genius. So we might define genius then as the natural talent comes from nature. It's not something we can study to create because it doesn't follow rules. It's natural talent for using our sensible faculties. In other words, it's about our senses and our ability to perceive the world in free play to create beautiful art, right? We can contrast our senses being in free play to what happens to our senses when we look at things in front of us, right? If you look at the computer monitor in front of you, your senses aren't in free play because your perceptual system, your senses, are categorizing the world in ways that are dictated by just how the human perceptual system works. If you turn off what's in front of you and close your eyes and just think, what would be the most beautiful way that the world can be? If you're a genius, you'll be able to conjure up in your mind a representation of the world that has a sort of perfect beauty, representational beauty to it that's free of being dependent on any object to create that representation for you. That ability is genius, and that's what the great artist uses to create great art, beautiful art. So like we said, because genius is a natural product of the senses, we cannot conceptually explain what makes a work beautiful. We only sense that it is beautiful. In the same way, we cannot teach someone how to make great art by using concepts. They have to be born with a natural ability, according to Kant, to use genius to create that art. For example, Roy Lichtenstein, who takes inspiration from Picasso to create a work of art for himself. It's not a matter of copying, but it's a matter of allowing your own genius to be activated by observing the beautiful works of someone else.